Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your candidate or career search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten, Executive Recruiter, Director of Recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. As usual, I have brought another fantastic guest to you today to kind of talk about what they do. So I'd like to welcome Michelle Cirocco, the Chief Responsibility Officer at Televerde. This is a leading B2B demand generation company that supports revenue and sales generation for its clients. The company has an extremely unique business model and provides sales training, education, and jobs for incarcerated women, both while imprisoned and after they're released, helping them find their voice and reach their human potential. Michelle has been a part of the Televerde family for more than 20 years, contributing to sales, marketing, and client success departments before taking the role of Chief Social Responsibility Officer, a position dedicated to create opportunities to change lives. Michelle, I heard you on a podcast and reached out in blind faith that you would say yes to coming on our show, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share with our audience today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, and you're just part of this huge movement. In fact, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but can you kind of give us a brief overview of the services that Televerde provides and how incarcerated women fit into that service, including, if you don't mind, your story?
Okay. Well, that's a lot to start with.
I know.
So from a high level, Televerde is a business-to-business demand generation and sales outsource agency. So essentially, we really help our customers find new customers. And we do that by combining best-in-class sales and marketing technology with the human touch to help our customers identify who they should be communicating with, starting the initial contact through kind of digital channels, email, marketing, and traditional digital marketing channels, and then starting the conversation with the business decision makers, CEOs, CFOs, vice presidents, high-level executives that are making decisions about really technology solutions. So our customers tend to be the who's who in the high-tech space. Companies like Marketo or SAP are outsourcing their demand generation and inside sales services to us. But it's not really so much the what we do that's so interesting. It's the how we do it. So Televerde is a company that was founded 25 years ago, based on the idea of providing women in prison with jobs, training, and education while they were incarcerated, that we could, one, build a profitable business, and two, enable the women to develop marketable skills that would enable them to successfully transition back into the community and be financially independent and develop a really meaningful and rewarding career. So we've now been doing this for 25 years, and the women do everything necessary to run our business. So if you think about a marketing department, all of the different roles in a marketing department, from the targeting and the account profiling and setting up marketing campaigns in tools like Eloqua or Marketo, and then actually making all of the calls and the reporting and the business intelligence and the analytics necessary to be successful. All of that work is done by women that work for us inside the prison.
That is amazing. You know what I just realized, Michelle? When you said that the Televerde is only 25 years old and you've been with the company for over 20 years, you've been there since the infancy of the company.
Yeah, I was like 12 when I started.
Me too.
So, yeah. So I have been with the company since we were a very small company. I'm employee number 40,
Wow.
and we have, as I talk about the women who have worked for us, because I do want to talk a little bit more about the business model before I get into kind of the rest of it, is that in addition to providing the women with jobs while they're incarcerated, we provide them with the opportunity to come work for us here at our corporate office when they get out. So to continue their career here. So here at our corporate office, we have about 200 people that work here, and 40% of the people working here at our corporate office are women who started their career with the company while they were incarcerated. And we have people at every level of the organization, in every single department of the organization, including 30% of our executive leadership team that started their career with the company while they were incarcerated.
That is incredible.
Yeah, and then in addition to providing them with the opportunity to come work here for us, we also founded a 501c3 that really helps with the wraparound services necessary to help the women get ready to join the workforce and transition back into the community when they're released. And they've also developed a job placement program so that we're partnering with other companies in the Valley and actually all over the country to help the women get meaningful work after they've been released from prison. And so we've had great success placing them with other companies, but also they have the opportunity to go on and work for our clients. And so, for example, SAP, one of the biggest technology companies in the world, regularly recruits the women from Televerde. So the gals will start representing SAP while they're incarcerated. They'll transition here to our corporate office into a sales development role or an inside sales rep role. And then when SAP has requirements at their Tempe office here in Arizona, they'll recruit directly from our workforce. And so currently they've got about 25 women working over there who started their career with the company while they were incarcerated at Televerde. And the number one business development rep in the country for SAP was a gal who started her career with Televerde while she was serving time.
That is just amazing to me that you have that kind of heart, that passion for these women and somebody needs to. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's kind of something that is close to me as well, because I grew up with my in-laws who they did prison ministry, from the time I met them when I was 13 till the time that my mother-in-law passed away. And do you want to know what the majority of the population of the people in attendance at her funeral were? People that she'd reached out to in prison ministry. And I mean, they just stood up there and boo-hooed and said how she changed their life, gave them a second chance when nobody else would. I mean, often these people would parole to their house. That's how into their, yeah.
That's really touching. So and you understand that the people that exist inside that are currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated are women just like you and me, right?
Yeah.
They're people who have made bad choices, and they're paying the consequences for the mistakes that they made or the decisions they made. And honestly, they shouldn't have to be judged for the rest of their life based on the worst decisions they made on the worst days of their lives. But as a society, we tend to continue to punish people for the rest of their lives through employment practices, voting practices, where people are able to live, and just force them to carry that stigma forever.
So, and that's so interesting that you say that. And I know that you're speaking not just because you're helping these women, but because you were one of these women. Can we kind of touch on that? Are you okay with that?
Sure. So my story is just exactly that, right? I have a phenomenal bio now. I spend most of my time speaking on stages and traveling around the world, talking about issues related to incarceration and employment, and but it hasn't always been this way. I haven't always had a C in front of my title, here at Televerde. I was just a small town girl doing, small town girl things, growing up in the 70s and 80s. I came from a place where girls didn't go to college, or really anybody didn't go to college. And I did what a lot of the girls in my neighborhood did. I became a bartender, and I married my high school sweetheart, and I had a couple children. And by the time I was 25, I realized I really wanted more out of life. I wanted a better house, a better car, more money. I wanted a man that had a better job. And so I left my husband and I set out on my own. but I was still a bartender, a really good bartender. If you've ever been a bartender or if you've ever been to a bar, you can imagine how much fun it is.
I've been a bartender, yes.
Yes, right. So, so it was a lot of fun, maybe too much fun. And I found my way into the wrong crowd, and with a deep desire for upward mobility and misguided entrepreneurial spirit, I ultimately found myself facing kind of the worst day of my life. My life looked a little bit like an episode of Breaking Bad at that point. And I went to see the judge one day, and that's when he told me he was giving me the maximum sentence in prison of 7 years. And, if you ask a little girl what she wants to be when she grows up, the one thing that she'll never say is, I want to go to prison. But it was quite possibly the best thing that ever happened to me. Because when I got there, I was lucky enough to have a really good counselor who said to me, he said, Michelle, you can spend your time here worrying about what other people think about you, worrying about how to fit in with the in crowd, because believe it or not, there's an in crowd in prison too. And he said, or you can, choose to use this time to become the best version of yourself. And so that's what I did. And, that meant taking care of a lot of things, getting right with myself in a lot of ways. And that's what started me on the path of setting goals and changing my life. And so in that process is when I heard about this company called Televerde. And, what I knew was they were a company that ran their business using incarcerated women in the state of Arizona. And that if you were really good at the job, that when you got out, you could get a job at their corporate office. And so I just figured that this was my golden ticket. I figured that if I could be really good with the company while I was on the inside, then I could get a job at the corporate office and just imagine the things I could do with my life. And so that was a very long time ago. So it just kind of worked for me.
Well, it did kind of work out exactly how you hoped it would, right? That you might get a job with corporate office, might work your way up there, stuff like that. So your business model invests in human potential by providing the education, the job training, and the opportunities. How has this helped to reduce recidivism in your community?
So we'll just let's talk a little bit about kind of incarceration and recidivism to kind of get to that part of the story is because for most people in our country don't really understand the gravity of the situation as it relates to mass incarceration in our country. But the reality of it is in the U.S. we are number one at incarcerating people. We currently have more people in prison than any other country in the world.
Oh, wow.
There's 2.3 million people that are currently incarcerated and 70 million people with a criminal record. So what that means is that 1 in 2 people have an immediate family member that's currently or formerly incarcerated. And we've already established between you and I that it was me. So
you don't know that.
Right. So it could very well be both of us, right?
Right.
It also means that with 70 million people with a criminal record, we have as many people in our country with criminal record as we do people with college degrees.
Wow.
Yeah. And as a country, we're spending $182 billion a year on incarceration, which would probably be okay if it was actually solving a problem, right? But as business people, we don't invest money unless we've got some sort of a return on our investment. And this is probably the worst ROI of any business proposition you could imagine, because actually 83% of all people will go back to prison within 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and the number one predictor for recidivism is joblessness. And 1 full calendar year after incarceration, 55% of people will report zero income. So it's obviously a huge situation. And in fact, for somebody with a criminal record, on average, they have a 25% higher unemployment rate. But for women with a criminal record, it's actually 43% higher unemployment.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's shocking
Yeah,
statistics when you hear it, right?
yes, absolutely.
So for the women of Televerde, we've been lucky enough to be able to provide opportunities for over 3,000 women so far. And the women of Televerde are reporting a recidivism rate of less than 5.5%.
I just want to stop and clap. I don't know if that's allowed, but that's yay. Wow. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So, even from the national standpoint, it's obviously very significant. But even here in Arizona, the recidivism rate for women in Arizona is 38%. And so it's a huge difference. And then the women of Televerde are reporting a 94% employment rate 1 year after incarceration, and salaries of 3x. I didn't mention that before. For those that are employed the first year after the 45% that do have employment, the average earnings is $10,469. Yeah.
Wow.
And the women, yeah, right. Could you imagine trying to live on that?
No. No.
Because as a society, we tend to believe that people who've been incarcerated are only capable of or only deserving of low wage and low skill jobs. But for the women of Televerde, the first year after they're reporting salary, their earnings are 3x, more than 3x the average. And 5 years after incarceration, reporting average salaries of about $60,000 a year.
That is amazing. I think I'm going to go back and count the number of times I say wow in this podcast because I'm just amazed. I'll tell you, I have a client that I work with that provides communications to the prison systems. And
okay.
I think, and I'm not going to mention their name here because I didn't get approval to do so, but I'm a huge fan of theirs. But when I first started working with them, I went in there and they were talking about this new product that they were delivering. And do you remember the iTunes jukeboxes that were around for a little bit? It was something that looked like that, but basically what it was is the inmates could earn privileges to FaceTime with their family each day. And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, and this is naive me, right? I know a lot more now, but I was just like, didn't these people do something wrong? Do they really deserve this? And that's when I learned about the recidivism and the fact that those people that lose touch with the outside world are the ones that are also more likely to go back to jail. So and then that made me think about what my in-laws were doing with their prison ministry and how important that was and how they were helping to reduce that recidivism as well.
Well, to kind of call you out a little bit on what your thought process was. That's a very common thought process, right? Is that we send people to prison and we lock them up and we ignore them and forget about them. And then when they get out, we expect them to somehow be different.
Yeah.
And 97% of all people who go to prison are going to return as our neighbors in the future.
Yeah. So.
And so that's what we all need to think about, is that these are our returning neighbors, and how do we welcome them into our communities in a way that enables them to be successful.
I think that's so important. And like I said, my mindset has really shifted in that regards. I want to help these people because just like you, I mean, when you had yours, that was what, 25, 26 years ago? Probably longer than that?
Yeah.
And it's still okay. So let me give you another example. I just had this happen today with a candidate who I'm not going to name, but we were doing the background check. Background check came back fine, but when we ran their DMV, it came back restricted, and so we started digging into it. And my client's like, "We can't hire somebody with a restricted driver's license." The reason the person's driver's license was restricted was because he had a DUI 21 years ago.
Absolutely.
Nothing since. Nothing on his record, nothing in his background, nothing. And we're having issues with this. 21 years ago, he was a kid. And so, I feel your pain. And, when I'm sitting there, I was thinking about you today when I was dealing with this. I was like, wow, what do people do? How do they overcome that?
Yeah, well, it's, how does the person overcome that? It actually requires the rest of our country to help people overcome that. So I'll give you my own personal example. as I said, my bio, I've got an MBA from a top business school. I've been vice president, chief marketing officer, and I was recently being heavily recruited for an executive level position that I was candidly overqualified for, but I was interested in seeing where it would go and how it would go. And after multiple conversations with the recruiter, they asked me to go online and fill out some form, some system that they had for the organization that I was interviewing for. And so when I did, I go through the process and I get to that question that says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And I thought to myself, I'm like, does this matter? Like this is almost 25 years ago. And, but I go back and I read it and it says, have you ever, not within the last 7 years or any of those, is have you ever? And I thought, okay, well, lying is lying and I don't do that. And
right.
So I'm like, okay, I checked the box and the system literally kicked me out and said, thank you for your interest in this position, but based on your qualifications, we don't feel you'd be a good fit. And it was one of those moments, one of those tipping point moments for me in my career. And I said, something's got to change. Like when does it stop? When do I stop becoming judged for, like I said, the worst day of my life?
Yeah. And so you've kind of started a movement around that. Is that a correct way to say it?
I would love to take credit for starting the movement, but there is a big movement that's going on that I've joined forces with a lot of huge organizations and important people in promoting this idea of banning the box and giving all qualified candidates a chance. Koch Industries was one of the first companies in the country to come forward and say, we regularly hire and employ people with criminal records, and we've banned the box at all of our companies and are really making a call for everybody to do the same. And then they have worked through their institutes and foundations with SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management Professionals. I'm assuming everybody on this call knows who SHRM is, since it's kind of HR related. And so they've partnered with SHRM to do the research necessary to help businesses, hiring managers understand how people feel about working with people with criminal records, and how people in the community feel about buying or having people with criminal records working for companies that they support. And the evidence is overwhelmingly positive on how people feel about this. For example, more than 50% of hiring managers just want to find the right candidate, right?
Absolutely.
And greater than 70% of people are absolutely fine with working with somebody with a criminal record or are completely indifferent to the topic. And that goes back to everybody knows somebody in this situation,
Absolutely.
And so SHRM has actually come out with some really good resources for hiring managers to and companies to use in doing this, because they're asking companies to take the pledge to basically just give all qualified candidates a chance. And that just means that put the screening process, put it further down into the thing. So take it out of the initial screening, find your best candidate, then have the conversation about, okay, is there something in your background that I should be aware of? And then determine, like you said, about your candidate. Does it make a difference to this job? Right? Does it make a difference to the position that we're hiring for? When did it happen? What is it? What's the relevance?
Yeah, that was kind of a shocker, and I've had several other instances come up where, as a recruiter, I'm the one that's usually going to get the offer for the candidate. And, I can think of many, many times when I've had, offers rescinded because of background checks, because the background checks are typically done after the offer's given, contingent on background and credit and all that good stuff, and drug tests. But, and I kind of want to go back to this automatic screening. How is that hurting the employer? How is that word?
Yeah. So if you think about it, we're at the beginning of what's going to become a major global talent shortage, right? So I don't know what the numbers are nationally, but for example, here in Arizona, we've got 3.66 3.6% unemployment here in Arizona. We are, well, and actually these numbers are nationally. They're 17 months now, the 7.3 million jobs available and only about 6.1 million people looking for work.
Yep.
So there's not enough talent to begin with. There's not enough people looking for work. Everybody's becoming familiar with the term ghosted for people who don't show up for interviews or don't show up for their first day of work, right?
Because, oh my gosh, yeah, as a recruiter, we get that a lot.
Yeah. And everybody can walk across the street to get $1 more or $10,000 more a year. And people are more than willing to. And so when you have the automatic screening, the technology that literally somebody goes in to apply for a job and it does what it did to me, how much talent are you excluding from even considering for a position? So it's taking away a whole talent pool of people who candidly once somebody with a criminal record gets a job, they tend to be some of the most loyal, engaged, and dedicated employees that you'll find, because honestly, the only thing worse than going to prison is actually having to tell somebody you've been to prison.
Oh wow.
So from an employment standpoint, if you can avoid having to go out and do that again, you're going to put your all into the job that you have, because they've taken a chance on you and they've invested in you, and you want to give back to the organization that's believing in you.
That is so amazing that you say that. And I want to just say, as a recruiter, I do want to get that information up front about, do you have anything in your background? Because then I can be your champion with the client and say, okay, this happened, but this is a situation. I still think you need to talk to them. And so we can sometimes help you get around that, where, you might not be able to get around it on your own. You can't get through that, automated system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do want to thank you, Michelle, because I know that the other day we had a candidate just like that came to us that I wasn't going to be able to help because of the person's record. And I sent that person to you. And even though you couldn't help that person, you sent them to the next step. And so I really appreciate you paying it forward and helping people like that.
Oh, absolutely. Any time that I can help another person in this space, kind of get a leg up or a hand forward, or however you want to describe it, I feel it's kind of my responsibility
as Chief Responsibility Officer.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, we are to the part of our show where we ask you our VIP questions. Are you ready?
I've been waiting all day for these moments.
Me too, actually. Not even kidding. All right. If you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what 3 things or 3 people would you take with you?
This was the hardest one for me to answer. So I would say one of the things I would take with me is our Director of Communications, Kelly Walenciak, because Kelly has just this awesome ability to understand the world around her and be able to communicate it in terms that everybody can understand. So she can take my craziness and help me communicate it to the people on Mars. She's
so you need a buffer, also, is what you're saying.
Yeah, she's also a vegan, and somehow I'm sure that if there's anything to eat on Mars, it's going to be plant-based. So she can help me figure out what to eat while we're there.
Smart.
Yeah, right. I would have to take champagne with me, because if there's one thing in the world that I just love, it's a glass of bubbles. Okay. And I'm certain there will be many moments to celebrate on Mars. And then I'd have to take my dog with me, because there's nothing better than the unconditional love of our little furry friends.
You're my kind of girl. I have 2 dogs, so that would take up 2 of the 3 slots.
Well, I know. I'd have to pick which dog to take, so I'd probably take the smaller one.
You can't pick?
Well,
pick
one's
out the
my
communication
husband's
officer.
dog. Yeah.
Take the dogs. Okay. What is one thing you do every morning to set your day up for success?
So this is the best way to describe this is that I ease my way into my day every day. Okay. I never, even if I have a 5 a.m. flight, I never get straight out of bed and get in the shower. Okay. I wake up, I take time for myself. I sit, I have my coffee or tea or, whatever morning beverage I'm having at that point in time. Sometimes it's just lemon water. And I wake up to the morning and focus on what's in front of me, what do I have happening, and just mentally and physically prepare myself for the day that's ahead of me.
That is
sometimes
wonderful.
Sometimes it's, if I've got a 5 a.m. flight, it might be only 15 minutes. And some mornings like today, I could spend 2.5 hours just getting my mind and my day organized for what I'm going to do in a given day.
That's awesome. Awesome. I do something very similar. I have a very structured routine in the morning, which if you knew me at all, you would be so impressed that I'm structured in the mornings. But it's something that I really treasure and that I protect. I don't care who's at my house. From 5:30 to 7, you don't mess with me. That's my time.
Yep.
So
that's right.
And
that's
it's
exactly
very structured. All right. Final question. If your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
I could think of a couple headlines, but I would have to say unapologetically me.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? That really does sum you up. And, there's so many little pieces and facets of you that we didn't touch on today that I wish we had more time. I really do. I think you're an incredible woman with an incredible mission. And I know that you're really starting to get out there, get the mission out there and make people aware of what y'all are doing where y'all haven't really done that in the past. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. And it's my pleasure.
How do people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn. It's just Michelle Cirocco. Follow me on Twitter at mcirocco. On Instagram is at mlcirocco. Facebook, I am actually embarking on, I'm going to do a shameless plug here for a second. There is a new movie coming out called Just Mercy, which is based on best-selling novel by Brian Stevenson. It's really his memoir about his life's work in criminal justice reform. Fabulous movie with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. I actually just had a private screening of it the other day. And I'm kind of an ambassador for promoting this movie and all the criminal justice reform that we're going to do around it. So I would ask everybody to follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and really learn about what's happening and find out more about how you can make a difference in your community as it relates to this space.
Well, you let us know how VIP can help support you in that. Because we can push stuff out to social and help, just broaden that audience even more. We'd love to do that for you.
Yes, absolutely. Hashtag represent justice. Start with that.
Hashtag represent justice. Got it. All right. Well, I just have one more thing to say to you, Michelle.
What's that?
You are a VIP.
And
awesome.
That's
Thank
a wrap
you.
for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.